The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the familiar hum of translation matrices as representatives from 47 different species gathered for the quarterly assessment of emerging civilizations. Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony adjusted his crystalline breathing apparatus and reviewed the holographic data streams floating before his four eyes. Today's agenda included evaluation of a recently discovered species from a small blue world in the Outer Rim territories. The humans, announced Council Speaker Veltar, her melodic voice carrying across the vast chamber through bioacoustic amplifiers grown into the living walls. Species designation Terra, Sol 3. They have achieved rudimentary space flight and established communication protocols with our monitoring stations. A ripple of polite interest passed through the assembled delegates. New species were always fascinating, though most followed predictable development patterns. The Zephyrians had mastered gravity manipulation before leaving their homeworld. The crystalline collective had evolved beyond physical form entirely before developing interstellar travel. The Void Dancers had learned to fold space-time itself as naturally as breathing. What is their primary technological foundation? Asked Ambassador Quindara of the Machine Collective, her cybernetic implants clicking softly as she processed data streams at superhuman speed. Most peculiar, replied Veltar, manipulating the holographic display to show images of human settlements and machinery. They appear to have built their entire technological civilization around the manipulation of metallic iron and its various alloys. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in what could only be described as polite confusion. Several delegates activated private communication channels, their bewilderment evident even across species barriers. Iron. Ambassador Thexmori of the Plasma Weavers literally glowed brighter with surprise. Surely there has been some translation error. No species builds a spacefaring civilization on simple metal manipulation. I assure you, the data has been verified through multiple observation cycles. Veltar continued, her tone remaining diplomatically neutral despite her own obvious confusion. Humans have developed remarkably sophisticated techniques for shaping, hardening, and combining iron with other elements. Their entire military, industrial, and transportation infrastructure relies heavily on ferrous metallurgy. Zethkar leaned forward in his biomechanical chair, studying the images more carefully. The human structures were undeniably impressive in their crude way. Massive bridges spanning impossible distances, vehicles that seemed to move by controlled explosions, and weapons that fired small metal projectiles at high velocity. But the underlying technology was so fundamentally primitive that he struggled to understand how they had achieved orbital flight. Show us their weapons systems, requested General Korthvi of the Warcast, her predatory instincts clearly engaged despite her diplomatic role. The Warcast had evolved from apex predators on a world where conflict was the primary driver of evolution, and they maintained a professional interest in how species approach violence. The holographic display shifted to show human military installations and equipment. Rows of vehicles covered in thick metal plating, soldiers carrying projectile weapons that seemed impossibly crude, and massive structures that appeared to launch controlled explosions over vast distances. Their primary weapons rely on chemical propellants to fire small, iron projectiles, Veltar explained, highlighting various human armaments. They have also developed explosive devices using similar chemical reactions, and their vehicles are essentially armored iron boxes designed to protect occupants while delivering firepower. General Korthvi's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among her species. Throwing rocks with fancy slingshots. How charmingly primitive. Do they even understand energy manipulation, plasma containment, molecular disruption fields? Our scans indicate minimal development in those areas, confirmed Veltar. They generate energy primarily through controlled burning of organic compounds and nuclear fission. Their most advanced weapons appear to use nuclear fusion, but only for crude explosive purposes rather than sophisticated energy manipulation. Ambassador Ythera of the symbiotic colonies, whose species had long ago merged with their technology to become living ships, pulsed with gentle amusement. It is rather endearing in a way, like watching larvae attempt to build a chrysalis from mud and sticks, though one must admire their determination to reach space using such limited tools. The question, interrupted Zethkar, is whether they pose any potential threat to galactic stability. Their technology may be primitive, but primitives can sometimes be unpredictable. Veltar manipulated the display to show human population centers and industrial capacity. Current assessment suggests minimal threat potential. Their weapons, while numerous, rely entirely on direct physical impact or explosive force. Any reasonably shielded vessel could withstand their most powerful attacks indefinitely. Their industrial capacity is limited by their dependence on extracting and refining raw materials from their planet's crust. What about their military tactics and strategic thinking? General Korthvi inquired, her professional curiosity overriding her initial dismissal. Remarkably sophisticated for such a primitive species, admitted Veltar. They demonstrate complex organizational structures, strategic planning capabilities, and remarkable adaptability in combat situations. However, these abilities are severely limited by their technological constraints. The display showed historical footage of human conflicts, carefully edited to remove the most disturbing elements of organic warfare. Even sanitized, the images revealed a species with an impressive capacity for organized violence and tactical innovation. They compensate for technological limitations through numerical superiority and creative application of their limited resources, Veltar continued. For example, they have developed remarkably sophisticated methods for coordinating large-scale military operations using primitive communication systems. Ambassador Quindara processed this information through her cybernetic implants, cross-referencing human capabilities against standard galactic threat assessments. Conclusion: minimal immediate threat, but potentially useful as a client species if properly guided. Recommend standard integration protocols with emphasis on technological uplift. Agreed, nodded Zethkar, though we should be careful not to overwhelm them. Species this primitive often suffer cultural collapse when exposed to advanced technology too quickly. General Korthvi's attention had returned to the weapons displays, studying the crude but functional human armaments with growing amusement. Look at this, she gestured toward images of human tanks and artillery. They literally carry their forges into battle, surrounded by the very metal they shape into weapons. It is like watching children play war with toys made from clay. Perhaps we should invite them to demonstrate their capabilities, suggested Ambassador Thexmori, his plasma-based form flickering with curiosity. A simple military exercise would allow us to evaluate their potential more accurately while providing them with valuable exposure to galactic standards. Veltar considered this proposal, consulting rapidly with various advisory subcommittees through quantum-encrypted channels. The integration protocol does call for practical assessment of species capabilities. A limited military demonstration could serve multiple purposes. Excellent. Per General Korthvi, my forces could use some light entertainment. It has been cycles since we have observed truly primitive warfare techniques. Perhaps we might learn something useful about improvisation and resource conservation. Zethkar activated his personal communication array to contact the monitoring stations in human space. Prepare standard first contact protocols. We shall invite the humans to send a representative military unit for demonstration purposes. Frame it as an honor and an opportunity for cultural exchange. What level of force should we deploy for the demonstration? Asked General Korthvi, already mentally reviewing available units. Something appropriately modest, replied Veltar. A single heavy cruiser with standard complement should be more than adequate to evaluate their capabilities while ensuring our personnel's safety. The hegemony battle cruiser Dominion's Edge should suffice, agreed General Korthvi. She is well shielded and carries a full complement of modern weapon systems. Captain Thalmec is experienced with primitive species integration. Ambassador Ythera pulsed with gentle concern. We should ensure the demonstration does not traumatize them. Primitive species often experience severe psychological impact when confronted with the reality of galactic military capabilities. Of course, assured Zethkar, we shall make it clear that this is merely a friendly exercise. Perhaps we can even provide them with some basic technological upgrades as a gesture of goodwill. The Council quickly approved the proposal, establishing protocols for the human military demonstration. A formal invitation would be transmitted to Earth through standard diplomatic channels, requesting that they send their finest military unit to participate in what would be described as a friendly competition and cultural exchange. As the session concluded, delegates began filing out of the chamber, many discussing the curious humans and their iron-based civilization with mixture of amusement and anthropological interest. The general consensus was clear. Humans were a charmingly primitive species that might prove useful as clients once properly educated about galactic realities. General Korthvi lingered, studying the human weapons displays with the professional interest of a career military officer. Despite her earlier dismissal, something about human tactical adaptability intrigued her. They had achieved remarkable things with remarkably limited resources. Curious, she murmured to herself, watching footage of human soldiers advancing under fire while maintaining complex formation patterns. They fight like they understand that survival depends on thinking faster than their enemies. Most primitive species simply rely on superior individual capability. Zethkar approached, having noticed her continued interest. Something concerns you, General? Not concerns, exactly, replied Korthvi thoughtfully. But I find myself wondering how they would adapt to truly superior technology. Most primitive species become paralyzed when faced with weapons they cannot understand. These humans seem to focus on what they can control rather than what they cannot. An interesting observation, acknowledged Zethkar. Perhaps that adaptability is what allowed them to achieve spaceflight with such limited resources. Perhaps, agreed Korthvi, though I suspect we are about to find out just how adaptable they truly are. As the chamber emptied, automated systems began preparing formal contact protocols with Earth. Within days, human governments would receive an invitation that would change their species' place in the galaxy forever. The message would be carefully crafted to appear as an honor while concealing the Council's true assessment of human capabilities. None of the departing delegates noticed the small notation in the human's psychological profile that mentioned their species' tendency to become more dangerous when underestimated. It was filed under minor behavioral quirks and deemed irrelevant to threat assessment calculations. The humans were about to receive their invitation to demonstrate their primitive Iron Age weapons against the most advanced military in the known galaxy. The Galactic Council anticipated a brief, educational demonstration that would establish appropriate relationships between species. They had no idea they were about to discover why humans called it the Iron Age. Admiral Sarachan stood before the holographic display in the Pentagon's Deep Space Communications Center, studying the alien message for the dozenth time in 3 hours. The translation software had worked overtime to convert the complex mathematical and linguistic patterns into something resembling English, but the meaning remained startlingly clear. They want to evaluate our military capabilities, General Marcus Rodriguez summarized, his weathered face betraying decades of military experience and current skepticism. Specifically, they want us to send our finest military unit to participate in what they're calling a friendly demonstration. It's a test, Admiral Chun said flatly. They want to see what we can do before they decide whether we're worth talking to as equals or just another species to be managed. Colonel James Harrison, recently transferred from Special Operations Command, leaned back in his chair and studied the alien ship specifications they'd been provided. Look at these numbers. Their heavy cruiser is 3 kilometers long and mounts energy weapons we can barely comprehend. They're not planning to evaluate us. They're planning to demonstrate their superiority. Dr. Elizabeth Warren from the Office of Alien Relations cleared her throat nervously. The diplomatic implications are enormous. This is our first formal contact with the galactic community. We need to make a good impression. Oh, we'll make an impression, Admiral Chen replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had spent 30 years turning impossible situations into unexpected victories. The question is what kind? General Rodriguez pulled up the human military assets available for the demonstration. They've given us 3 weeks to prepare and transport our forces to the designated coordinates. They'll provide transportation for our equipment, but we can only bring what fits in a single standard cargo configuration. How generous, muttered Colonel Harrison. They'll give us a ride to our own execution. What do we know about their combat capabilities? Asked Admiral Chun, studying the sparse intelligence data they'd gathered from alien broadcasts and observation. Energy shields that can supposedly withstand anything we can throw at them. Weapons that manipulate matter at the molecular level. Faster-than-light communication and transportation, recited Dr. Warren from her tablet. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours in every measurable category. Every measurable category, repeated Admiral Chen thoughtfully. What about immeasurable categories? Colonel Harrison caught her meaning immediately. You're thinking asymmetric warfare. Hit them where they're not expecting to be hit. I'm thinking about what they don't understand about humans, Chen replied. They've been watching us from a distance, analyzing our technology, but they don't really understand how we think. General Rodriguez activated a secure communication link to Strategic Command. What kind of unit are you thinking of sending? Admiral Chen smiled, and several people in the room felt suddenly sorry for the aliens. I'm thinking about a unit that represents the absolute best of human military capability. Not our most advanced technology, but our most effective soldiers. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council observation post in the outer system detected the approach of 2 vessels. The larger ship was clearly alien construction, one of the standard transport vessels provided for the human delegation. The smaller ship appeared to be human-built, a crude but functional design that radiated electromagnetic signatures from its primitive propulsion systems. Captain Thalmec of the battle cruiser Dominion's Edge reviewed the incoming data with professional interest. His species had evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity world, giving them natural advantages in tactical thinking and rapid decision-making. He had supervised dozens of primitive species evaluations and expected this to be routine. Human delegation is requesting permission to approach, Captain, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Yith Cole. They appear to have brought a single small vessel and approximately 200 personnel. 200. Captain Thalmec's ear flaps twitched with surprise. That is considerably fewer than most species bring to these demonstrations. Are you certain they understood the parameters? Communication logs confirm they understood, sir. They specifically requested minimal numbers for what they termed efficiency of operation. Captain Thalmec studied the human vessel through his ship's advanced sensor arrays. The design was remarkably crude, essentially a metal cylinder with primitive rocket engines and basic life support systems. But something about its construction suggested serious military purpose rather than civilian transport. Were they carrying for weapons? Difficult to determine, sir. The vessel appears to be heavily shielded against sensor penetration, unusual for such primitive technology. We could detect multiple metallic objects of various sizes, but nothing that registers as advanced weaponry. Probably their finest kinetic projectors and chemical explosives, mused the captain. Allow them to approach. Begin standard evaluation protocols. Within hours, the human delegation had transferred to specially prepared areas aboard the Dominion's Edge. Captain Thalmec expected to meet with the primitive aliens and explain the demonstration procedures, then watch them panic when they realized the scale of technology they faced. Instead, he found himself facing Admiral Chun in the main conference chamber, feeling distinctly off balance for reasons he couldn't identify. Admiral Chun, he began, activating universal translation systems. Welcome aboard the Dominion's Edge. I am Captain Thalmec. We are honored to host your species' first formal military demonstration. Captain Thalmec, replied Admiral Chun, her manner professional, but not particularly deferential. We appreciate the opportunity to show the Galactic Council what human military forces can accomplish. Captain Thalmec blinked in surprise at her tone. Most primitive species approach these demonstrations with obvious nervousness or desperate attempts to impress. Admiral Chun spoke as if she were discussing routine training exercises with equals. Perhaps you would like a tour of our vessel's capabilities before we begin the demonstration, suggested the captain. It might provide useful context for understanding galactic military standards. That would be very educational, agreed Admiral Chun. Though, I should mention that our people have already completed their preparation procedures. We're ready to begin whenever convenient for your schedule. Already prepared? Captain Thalmec's confusion deepened. Perhaps you misunderstood the scope of these demonstrations. We will be conducting live-fire exercises using actual military weapons and tactical scenarios. Yes, we understood that, Admiral Chen replied calmly. Our people are looking forward to the exercise. Captain Thalmec decided to demonstrate galactic capabilities immediately. Perhaps seeing advanced technology would help the humans understand what they faced. The tour of the Dominion's Edge took 3 hours, during which Captain Thalmec showcased weapon systems that could sterilize planets, defensive shields that could absorb the energy output of stars, and sensors that could track individual molecules across interstellar distances. He expected Admiral Chun to become progressively more intimidated as she realized the impossibility of competing against such technology. Instead, she asked technical questions about energy consumption, response times, and operational limitations with the focused interest of a professional evaluating potential challenges. Your energy management systems are impressive, Admiral Chen commented as they observed the massive fusion reactors powering the ship's systems. I notice you've optimized for maximum power output rather than efficiency or stealth. Stealth is irrelevant when you possess overwhelming firepower, replied Captain Thalmec, slightly puzzled by her observation. Interesting philosophical difference, murmured Admiral Chun. As they toured the Tactical Operations Center, Admiral Chen studied the holographic displays showing galactic military deployments and strategic assessments. Your forces seem very centralized, she observed. Large formations operating from fixed bases with predetermined objectives. Naturally, replied Captain Thalmec. Coordinated operations require centralized command structures and standardized equipment. Surely your species understands basic military organization. We do, Admiral Chen agreed. We just organize differently. Captain Thalmec was beginning to feel frustrated with the human admiral's refusal to be properly intimidated. Either she didn't understand what she was seeing, or she was hiding her reaction for cultural reasons. Admiral Chun, he said directly, do you understand that the weapons systems you have seen could destroy your entire home planet in a matter of minutes? Yes, replied Admiral Chen matter-of-factly. Do you understand that destroying our home planet would not stop human military forces from completing their mission objectives? Captain Thalmec stared at her, processing this statement. I beg your pardon? We don't operate under the assumption that our bases or population centers are safe, Admiral Chun explained patiently. Human military doctrine assumes that everything we cannot personally defend will be destroyed by enemies with superior technology. So we plan accordingly. Plan accordingly how? We make sure that destroying our stuff doesn't stop us from destroying their stuff, Admiral Chun said simply. Captain Thalmec felt a chill run through his endoskeleton. There was something in the human admiral's tone that suggested she wasn't engaging in primitive bravado. She was stating facts. Perhaps we should begin the demonstration, he suggested, suddenly, eager to see exactly what these humans thought they could accomplish. Excellent, agreed Admiral Chun. Our people have been getting restless. As they headed toward the designated demonstration areas, Captain Thalmec activated private communication channels to General Korthvi and the Council observers. Something is unusual about these humans, he reported. Either they don't understand what they're facing, or they understand something we don't. Clarifi, Requested General Korthvi. They don't seem intimidated by our capabilities. If anything, they seem eager. Primitive species often demonstrate false bravado when overwhelmed, replied the general. Proceed with standard evaluation protocols. Their true limitations will become apparent once live-fire exercises begin. Captain Thalmec hoped she was right, but something in Admiral Chin's confident demeanor suggested the humans had not come to this demonstration expecting to be impressed by alien technology. They had come expecting to impress aliens with human capabilities, which, given the vast technological gap between species, should have been impossible. As they approached the demonstration area, Captain Thalmec caught his first glimpse of the human military unit preparing for the exercise. They moved with professional efficiency, checking equipment and coordinating activities with practiced ease. Nothing about their behavior suggested they felt outmatched or overwhelmed. If anything, they looked like predators preparing for a hunt. The demonstration arena aboard the Dominion's Edge had been configured to simulate various combat environments, from asteroid fields to planetary surfaces. Advanced holographic systems could create virtually any tactical scenario, while energy shields ensured complete safety for observers and participants. Captain Thalmec had used this facility dozens of times to evaluate primitive species, and the results were always predictably one-sided. As the human unit assembled in the staging area, Captain Thalmec studied them through the observation deck's transparent aluminum windows. 200 soldiers, organized into small teams with distinctively different equipment configurations. Unlike most species, who brought their most impressive technologies for evaluation, the humans appeared to carry remarkably basic gear. Beginning standard evaluation protocol, announced Lieutenant Yithkol from the control station. First scenario, urban pacification with hostile civilian populations. General Korthvi materialized in the observation deck through quantum teleportation, her predatory form radiating anticipation. I wanted to observe this personally, she explained. Something about these humans intrigues me. They seem remarkably calm for primitives about to face advanced military technology, Captain Thalmec agreed. Their equipment appears to be entirely kinetic-based weaponry and basic armor systems. The holographic urban environment materialized around the human soldiers, complete with simulated civilian populations, hostile forces armed with galactic standard weapons, and complex terrain features. The scenario was designed to test tactical decision-making, technology integration, and stress response under overwhelming odds. Standard protocols call for the primitive species to be provided with basic shield generators and energy weapons, reported Lieutenant Yithkol. Shall I activate distribution? Admiral Chin's voice came through the communication system before Captain Thalmec could respond. Thank you, but we prefer to use our own equipment for evaluation purposes. Admiral, Captain Thalmec activated direct communication. The opposing forces in this scenario are equipped with galactic standard military technology. Your kinetic weapons will not be effective against energy shields and advanced armor systems. We understand, replied Admiral Chin calmly. Please proceed with the scenario. General Korthvi's mandibles clicked with anticipation. This should be educational for them. The scenario began with simulated enemy forces equipped with plasma rifles, portable shield generators, and gravity manipulation weapons taking positions throughout the urban environment. Against such technology, primitive kinetic weapons should have been completely ineffective. Instead, the human soldiers immediately did something neither observer had ever seen before. They disappeared. Where did they go? Demanded General Korthvi, studying the tactical displays. Unknown, replied Lieutenant Yithkol, frantically adjusting sensor parameters. They appear to have scattered throughout the urban environment, but our tracking systems are having difficulty maintaining locks. Captain Thalmec leaned forward, studying the displays more carefully. The humans hadn't actually disappeared, but they had somehow minimized their sensor signatures while moving through the environment in ways that defied standard tactical doctrine. They're using the urban infrastructure, he realized. Sewers, building interiors, rooftops. They're treating the entire environment as three-dimensional terrain rather than following standard movement corridors. Clever, admitted General Korthvi, but ultimately pointless against superior technology. The first engagement occurred when a squad of simulated enemies with advanced weapons encountered what appeared to be empty street intersection. The ambush came from directions that shouldn't have been possible, above, below, and through walls that should have provided cover. How did they? Lieutenant Yithkol stopped mid-sentence as his displays registered the aftermath. 6 simulated enemies neutralized in under 10 seconds by precisely coordinated fire from concealed positions. Impressive coordination for primitives, General Korthvi acknowledged. But against energy shields, the shields failed, interrupted Lieutenant Yithkol, rechecking his readings. All targets were neutralized through shield penetration. Captain Thalmek studied the tactical replay, watching the human attack in slow motion. The kinetic projectiles had indeed penetrated standard energy shielding, but that should have been impossible. Enhance resolution on human weapon systems, he ordered. The display zoomed in on human soldiers as they engaged subsequent enemy positions. Their weapons appeared to be conventional kinetic projectile systems, but the projectiles themselves were behaving in unexpected ways. Analysis, demanded General Korthvi. The projectiles appear to be constructed from multiple metallic components that separate during flight, reported Lieutenant Yithkol after running the data through tactical computers. Initial impact depletes shield energy through kinetic transfer, then secondary penetrator elements breach the weakened barrier. They're using staged penetrator rounds, Captain Thalmek realized with growing amazement, specifically designed to defeat energy shielding through coordinated kinetic impact. That's not possible, protested General Korthvi. Energy shields operate through quantum field manipulation. Primitive kinetics cannot. Her statement was interrupted by another series of engagements as human teams systematically eliminated enemy positions throughout the urban environment. Each attack demonstrated increasingly sophisticated understanding of shield technology limitations and tactical countermeasures. They're not just defeating the shields, observed Captain Thalmek, studying the patterns. They're learning how the shields work by testing them with different projectile configurations. As if to confirm his observation, human soldiers began modifying their ammunition between engagements, adjusting projectile characteristics for specific target types. Teams equipped with different weapon systems coordinated their attacks to create cumulative effects that overcame defensive systems through sheer tactical sophistication. Scenario complete, announced Lieutenant Yithkol unnecessarily. The urban environment was clear of all hostile forces, with human teams maintaining overwatch positions and coordinated defensive perimeters. Casualties? Asked General Korthvi. 0 human casualties, reported Lieutenant Yithkol. All objectives secured with minimal ammunition expenditure. General Korthvi studied the tactical displays with the focused attention of a career military professional encountering something genuinely unexpected. Initialize Scenario 2. Technological Superiority Engagement. The second scenario materialized around the human forces, placing them in open terrain against opponents equipped with the most advanced individual weapons available in galactic military arsenals. Gravity manipulators that could crush targets through dimensional distortion. Molecular disintegration beams that could erase matter at the quantum level. Temporal distortion fields that could slow or accelerate local time streams. Against such weapons, kinetic projectiles should have been completely useless. The human response was immediate and completely unexpected. They attacked. Not a cautious probe or defensive positioning, but an immediate, coordinated assault that closed distance with enemy positions before advanced weapons could achieve target lock and optimal firing solutions. They're charging, observed Lieutenant Yithkol with something resembling disbelief. No, corrected Captain Thalmek, studying the human movement patterns. They're flowing. Look at their formation structure. The human soldiers moved like liquid across the terrain, individual teams following routes that appeared random, but created mutually supporting fields of fire while never presenting concentrated targets for advanced weapon systems. When gravity manipulators tried to target specific soldiers, they found empty ground. When molecular disintegration beams acquired locks, their targets had already moved to new positions. "How are they moving that fast?" demanded General Korthvi. "They're not," replied Captain Thalmec, finally understanding what he was seeing. "They're predicting where the weapons will fire and avoiding those locations before the targeting systems can complete acquisition. That's impossible. No primitive species has reaction times capable of they're not reacting," interrupted Captain Thalmec. "They're predicting. Look at the tactical displays. They're using terrain analysis and weapons performance data to calculate optimal firing positions and avoidance patterns." As if to demonstrate his point, a human soldier rolled behind cover just as a molecular disintegration beam scorched the exact position where he had been standing. The weapon operator adjusted aim to track his movement, only to find that the human had calculated the adjustment and moved to a position that forced the weapon to choose between two equally valid targets. "They're making the advanced weapons choose between multiple optimal targets simultaneously," realized Lieutenant Yithkol, overloading the targeting algorithms through tactical positioning. The engagement ended when human soldiers reached close-quarters range with their opponents. At point-blank distance, advanced weapons designed for optimal performance against distant targets became liabilities rather than advantages. "Scenario complete," reported Lieutenant Yithkol. "All enemy forces neutralized. Human casualties, 0. General Korthvi's predatory instincts were now fully engaged. These humans were demonstrating combat capabilities that should have been impossible given their technological limitations. "Scenario 3, she ordered. "Ship-to-ship combat. Deep space engagement against superior firepower." Captain Thalmec activated communication channels to Admiral Chun. "Admiral, the final scenario requires your vessel to engage simulated enemy ships in deep space combat. I should warn you that the opposing forces will be equipped with weapons capable of destroying your ship in a single coordinated volley." "Understood," replied Admiral Chun. "We're ready to begin." "Admiral." Captain Thalmec felt compelled to explain the reality of the situation. "Your vessel appears to mount only kinetic weapons and basic defensive systems. The simulated enemies will have energy shields, faster-than-light weapons, and firepower advantages of several orders of magnitude." "Yes," agreed Admiral Chun. "Should be interesting." As the human vessel moved into position for the deep space engagement scenario, Captain Thalmec found himself reconsidering everything he thought he understood about primitive species and military capability. These humans weren't fighting advanced technology with superior technology. They were fighting advanced technology with superior thinking. And so far, thinking was winning. The human vessel Indomitable hung in the simulated deep space environment like a crude metal dart surrounded by technological marvels. 3 kilometers from the Dominion's edge, it appeared almost comically primitive next to the sleek alien warship. Where the galactic vessel curved with organic grace and pulsed with energy patterns, the human ship was all angles and armor plating, built with the aesthetic sensibility of the species that expected their technology to be shot at. Captain Thalmec studied the tactical displays with growing fascination. The human ship registered on sensors as a simple cylinder approximately 400 meters long, mounting what appeared to be basic kinetic weapons and minimal defensive systems. No energy shields, no faster-than-light weapons, no exotic matter manipulation capabilities. "Initiating deep space combat scenario," announced Lieutenant Yithkol. "Enemy force consists of 3 heavy cruisers with full galactic military loadouts. The simulated enemy ships materialized in the holographic environment, each one larger and more heavily armed than the human vessel. Their weapons systems included plasma cannons capable of melting asteroids, gravity bombs that could create temporary black holes, and molecular dissolution beams that could erase matter at the quantum level." "This is massacre," murmured General Korthvi, studying the tactical imbalance. "The human vessel cannot possibly survive the opening volley." Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system with characteristic calm. Request permission to begin engagement. Admiral. Captain Thalmec felt compelled to offer one final warning. These simulated weapons represent actual galactic military capabilities. Your ship will be destroyed within seconds of engagement beginning. Understood, replied Admiral Chen. Beginning engagement sequence. The human vessel's behavior immediately defied every expectation. Instead of attempting to maintain distance or seeking cover, the Indomitable accelerated directly toward the center of the enemy formation. Suicide charge, observed Lieutenant Yithkol. Primitive species often resort to desperate tactics when overwhelmed. No, Captain Thalmec corrected, studying the human ship's trajectory more carefully. Look at their acceleration pattern. They're not charging randomly. The Indomitable's course took it through a complex spiral pattern that seemed designed to confuse targeting systems while closing distance rapidly. As the simulated enemy ships began firing, their advanced weapons found themselves tracking a target that refused to behave according to standard tactical predictions. How are they avoiding targeting locks? Demanded General Korthvi. Watching plasma bolts miss their target by seemingly impossible margins. They're changing acceleration vectors at random intervals, reported Lieutenant Yithkol. Every time targeting systems predict their position, they alter course just enough to spoil the calculation. That's not random, Captain Thalmec realized, studying the human ship's movement patterns. They're following a predetermined evasion sequence designed to defeat predictive targeting algorithms. As if to confirm his observation, the Indomitable's evasion patterns suddenly shifted from defensive maneuvering to something far more aggressive. The human ship began accelerating toward specific positions that forced enemy vessels to choose between maintaining optimal firing positions or avoiding collision courses. They're using ramming threats to disrupt enemy formation, observed General Korthvi with something approaching professional admiration. Forcing the enemy to choose between maintaining tactical position and avoiding kinetic impact. The human ship's kinetic weapons opened fire as it closed to effective range. Instead of the simple metal projectiles that Captain Thalmec expected, the weapons fired complex payloads that separated into multiple components during flight. Analysis of human projectiles, he ordered. Multi-stage kinetic penetrators with exotic matter cores, reported Lieutenant Yithkol after running sensor data through tactical computers. Initial impact depletes energy shields. Secondary penetrator breaches armor. Tertiary payload appears to be some form of guided submunition that seeks internal targets. They're not just firing bullets, Captain Thalmec realized. They're firing complete weapon systems disguised as simple projectiles. The first simulated enemy ship succumbed to coordinated impacts from human weapons fire. Its shields failed under repeated kinetic bombardment. Armor was breached by precision penetrator rounds, and internal systems were destroyed by guided submunitions that somehow navigated through the ship's interior to find critical components. How did their guided rounds navigate internal ship systems? Demanded General Korthvi. Unknown, admitted Lieutenant Yithkol. The submunitions appear to contain sophisticated guidance systems and sensor packages. They're treating ship interiors as three-dimensional tactical environments. The second enemy ship fell to an even more sophisticated attack pattern. The human vessel used gravitational slingshot maneuvers around simulated asteroids to achieve impossible approach angles, fired kinetic penetrators that ricocheted off asteroid surfaces to strike from unexpected directions, and somehow coordinated multiple projectile impacts to arrive simultaneously from different vectors. They're using the entire battlefield as a weapon, observed Captain Thalmec with growing amazement. Every object in the environment becomes part of their tactical calculation. The third enemy ship attempted to withdraw to longer range where its energy weapons would have decisive advantages. The human response was immediate and devastating. Long-range kinetic projectiles that somehow maintained guidance capability across interplanetary distances. Those projectiles are maintaining course corrections over millions of kilometers, reported Lieutenant Yithkol. That should be impossible with kinetic technology. Unless the projectiles contain their own guidance systems, Captain Thalmec suggested. But that would require each projectile to be essentially an independent spacecraft, protested Lieutenant Yithcole. The computational requirements alone, scenario complete, Admiral Chen's voice interrupted their discussion. All enemy vessels neutralized. Indomitable sustained minor armor damage, but remains fully operational. General Korthvai studied the tactical displays in stunned silence. 3 state-of-the-art galactic warships had been destroyed by a primitive vessel that mounted only kinetic weapons and basic defensive systems. This is impossible, she said finally. Energy weapons have decisive advantages over kinetic systems. Advanced shields should provide complete protection against metal projectiles. Superior sensor systems should guarantee first strike capability. Unless, Captain Thalmec said slowly, the kinetic systems aren't actually primitive. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main communication screen. Her expression professionally satisfied. Thank you for the excellent training scenarios. Our people found them quite educational. Admiral, Captain Thalmec struggled to find appropriate words. Your weapons systems appear to be far more sophisticated than our initial assessments indicated. Our weapons systems are exactly what we told you they were, replied Admiral Chen. Kinetic projectiles fired from chemical propellant systems mounted on an iron-hulled vessel. But the guidance systems, the multi-stage penetrators, the coordinated impact patterns are all features of kinetic projectiles fired from chemical propellant systems, Admiral Chen completed calmly. General Korthvai leaned forward, her predatory instincts fully engaged. Admiral, are you saying that these complex weapons capabilities are standard for human military technology? I'm saying that what you call complex weapons capabilities, we call ammunition, Admiral Chen replied. Every projectile fired from a human weapon system contains guidance computers, sensors, communication systems, and mission-specific payloads. We've been building smart ammunition longer than we've been building spacecraft. Captain Thalmec felt a chill run through his endoskeleton as implications began cascading through his tactical analysis software. How many projectiles can your ship carry? The Indomitable's primary magazine contains approximately 50,000 rounds of various types, Admiral Chen answered matter-of-factly, plus secondary weapons, defensive systems, and manufacturing capability for specialized ammunition. 50,000 guided missiles, whispered Lieutenant Yithcole. 50,000 kinetic penetrators, corrected Admiral Chen. We don't call them missiles because they don't use reaction propulsion after firing. They're just very sophisticated bullets. General Korthvai activated private communication channels to the Galactic Council, her military mind racing through the strategic implications of what she had witnessed. Emergency tactical assessment required. Human military capabilities grossly underestimated in initial evaluation. Explain, came the immediate response from Council chambers. They have achieved weapons sophistication equivalent to galactic military standards using completely different technological approaches, she reported. Every kinetic projectile functions as an independent guided weapon system. Their tactical doctrine assumes technological inferiority and compensates through superior coordination and tactical innovation. Are they a threat to galactic security? General Korthvai studied the tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of 3 advanced warships by a single primitive vessel. Unknown, but they are definitely not primitive. Admiral Chen continued speaking, apparently unaware of the private communications occurring around her. We appreciate the opportunity to demonstrate human military capabilities, though I should mention that this was a relatively light demonstration. The Indomitable is configured for reconnaissance and first contact missions rather than full combat operations. Light demonstration? Captain Thalmec struggled to process this statement. Certainly, replied Admiral Chen. For a full combat capability assessment, you need to observe fleet operations with dedicated combat vessels. The Indomitable carries only basic armaments suitable for peaceful contact missions. Captain Thelmack stared at the tactical displays, showing the destruction of 3 heavy cruisers. Then, looked back at Admiral Chen's calm expression. "Admiral," he said carefully, "what would you consider heavy armaments?" Admiral Chen smiled, and Captain Thelmack felt suddenly grateful that humans had come for peaceful contact rather than conquest. "Captain," she said, "I think that might be a conversation for another day." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving General Korthvai's tactical assessment. Representatives from 47 species materialized in the council chamber through various transportation methods, their confusion and concern evident across all translation protocols. Ambassador Zethkar arrived via quantum tunnel, his crystalline breathing apparatus cycling rapidly in patterns that indicated severe agitation. The preliminary reports from the human military demonstration had fundamentally challenged every assumption about primitive species and technological development. The humans destroyed 3 simulated heavy cruisers using kinetic weapons, Council Speaker Veltar announced to the assembled delegates. General Korthvai reports that their technological capabilities have been grossly underestimated in all previous assessments. A wave of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Yithera of the symbiotic colonies pulsed with confused colors as her living ship components struggled to process the information. "Surely there's been some error in simulation parameters," suggested Ambassador Quindara of the Machine Collective, her cybernetic implants working at maximum capacity to analyze available data. Kinetic weapons cannot defeat advanced energy shielding systems. General Korthvai materialized through emergency teleportation protocols, her predatory form radiating grim professional assessment. "There was no error. I observed the engagement personally. The humans have developed kinetic projectiles with guidance systems, penetration capabilities, and coordination protocols that rival our most advanced weapons technologies." "Impossible," declared Ambassador Thexmori of the Plasma Weavers. "Our energy manipulation techniques represent millions of years of evolutionary development. No species achieves equivalent capability through primitive metallurgy. The humans have," General Korthvai replied flatly. "Every projectile they fired contained sophisticated electronics, guidance computers, and mission-specific payloads. They have essentially miniaturized complete weapon systems into individual bullets." Zethkar studied the tactical recordings that General Korthvai transmitted to the Council's analysis systems. The human weapons performance appeared to violate fundamental assumptions about technological development paths. "How is such miniaturization possible without advanced nanotechnology?" he inquired. "They call it precision engineering," replied General Korthvai. "Apparently, humans have developed manufacturing techniques that allow them to create extremely complex devices using conventional materials and processes. They compensate for technological limitations through engineering sophistication." Council Speaker Veltar manipulated holographic displays to show comparative assessments of human capabilities versus standard galactic military technologies. The analysis software struggled to classify human weapons systems because they didn't fit established technological categories. "The implications are considerable," she announced. "If humans have achieved military effectiveness equivalent to galactic standards using entirely different technological approaches, then our standard integration protocols may be inadequate." Ambassador Quindara processed thousands of data streams simultaneously, cross-referencing human capabilities against historical patterns of species development. No recorded species has achieved spacefaring capability while maintaining technological dependence on ferrous metallurgy. Human development patterns are unprecedented in galactic history. "What concerns me," interrupted General Korthvai, "is that they described this demonstration as a light assessment using a reconnaissance vessel with basic armaments. When I asked about their heavy weapons, Admiral Chun suggested that might be a conversation for another day." The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the implications. If the devastating capabilities they had witnessed represented basic human military technology, What did their advanced weapons systems accomplish? We need to reconsider our entire approach to human integration, suggested Ambassador Yathera, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to colors indicating deep concern. These are not primitives requiring technological uplift. These are potential equals using different technological paradigms. Or potential threats, added Ambassador Thexmori grimly. A species capable of matching galactic military standards using primitive technology might pose unprecedented dangers if properly motivated. Zethkar activated communication protocols to contact Captain Thalmec aboard the Dominion's Edge. Captain, what is your assessment of human intentions? Do they appear hostile or aggressive? Captain Thalmec's response carried undertones of professional respect mixed with wariness. Admiral Chun has been entirely professional and cooperative, but there's something about human tactical thinking that suggests they approach every situation as a potential combat scenario. They're constantly evaluating threats and opportunities, even during peaceful interactions. Elaborate. When I showed Admiral Chun our weapons systems, she asked about energy consumption rates, response times, and operational limitations. When she toured our tactical centers, she commented on our centralized command structures and standardized operational procedures. She wasn't asking academic questions. She was conducting tactical assessment. General Korthvai's mandibles clicked with growing concern. She was learning how to fight us. That was my impression, confirmed Captain Thalmec. Humans appear to treat every encounter as an opportunity to gather intelligence about potential opponents. It may be an unconscious survival instinct rather than deliberate hostility. Council Speaker Veltar consulted rapidly with advisory committees through quantum encrypted channels. Recommendation from Integration Command: suspend standard uplift protocols pending comprehensive assessment of human technological capabilities and intentions. Agreed, said Zethkar. But we also need to consider the possibility that humans represent a new type of galactic species. Their technological approach suggests thinking patterns that differ fundamentally from established norm. Ambassador Quindara had been processing human communication patterns and tactical behaviors through advanced analysis algorithms. Preliminary assessment suggests humans have evolved in an environment where technological superiority was never guaranteed. Their entire military doctrine appears designed to defeat opponents with superior technology through superior tactics and coordination. What kind of environment produces such development? Asked Ambassador Yathera. A competitive one, replied General Korthvai grimly. Humans evolve on a world where different groups of the same species fought each other using constantly improving technology. They never had the luxury of assuming technological superiority, so they learned to win through tactical innovation and operational excellence. The implications sent another wave of concern through the chamber. Most galactic species had achieved dominance on their home worlds before developing advanced technology. Humans had apparently developed advanced technology specifically to compete with other humans. This explains their weapons' sophistication, realized Zethkar. They're not primitive beings using simple tools. They're an advanced species that specializes in kinetic weapons because those weapons proved most effective in their competitive environment. Request permission to interview Admiral Chun directly, suggested Ambassador Quindara. We need to understand human intentions and capabilities more comprehensively. Granted, replied Veltar, but maintain full diplomatic protocols. If humans represent a new class of galactic species, we want to establish positive relationships. As the council session continued, Captain Thalmec transmitted additional observations from his interactions with the human delegation. One more thing, he reported. When Admiral Chin's people prepared for the demonstration exercises, they didn't seem nervous or excited. They seemed routine, as if complex military operations against technologically superior opponents were normal for them. Meaning we may have just observed standard human military capability rather than their finest achievements, replied Captain Thalmec. This wasn't their elite forces demonstrating exceptional skill. This was their normal people doing normal things. In the depths of the council chamber, automated analysis systems struggled to update threat assessment protocols and integration procedures for a species that didn't fit any established categories. The humans were clearly advanced, clearly capable, and clearly thinking in ways that galactic civilization had never encountered. As the emergency session concluded, delegates began making preparations for comprehensive diplomatic contact with humanity. But underlying the diplomatic preparations was a growing realization that first contact with humans might represent a fundamental change in galactic civilization's understanding of technological development and military capability. Somewhere in the back of everyone's mind was Admiral Chen's casual comment that this had been a light demonstration using basic armaments. If this was basic, what did advanced human military capability look like? 3 days later, Admiral Chen received a formal invitation to address the Galactic Council directly. The message was carefully worded to convey respect for human achievements while requesting clarification of human intentions regarding galactic civilization. Admiral Chen read the invitation twice, then activated communication channels to Earth. "Command, this is Chen," she transmitted. "The aliens want to have a more serious conversation. Request guidance on whether we're ready to show them what human military forces can really do." The response from Earth was immediate. "Your discretion, Admiral. But remember that they laughed at our primitive arms until they learned why we call it the Iron Age." Admiral Chen smiled as she began composing her response to the Galactic Council. They wanted to understand human capabilities and intentions. She was looking forward to explaining exactly what humans could accomplish when they stopped holding back. The Iron Age was just the beginning of human technological development. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn what came next. After all, humans have been preparing for this conversation for thousands of years. Ever since they first realized that the universe was vast, dangerous, and full of potential threats that might have better technology, but probably didn't have better soldiers. The demonstration aboard the Dominion's Edge had been humanity saying hello. The real conversation was about to begin.